I quietly locked the bathroom door from the outside while Jason and Veronica were still splashing around like a couple of teenagers, completely unaware that Madison's 62-year-old mother had just caught them in the act. Then I pulled out my phone and made two calls that would change everything. When Madison and David showed up about 20 minutes later, the fireworks were just about ready to start. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let me tell you exactly how I ended up in this delicious moment of revenge because honey, this story is worth every second of your time. It was supposed to be a surprise birthday party for my daughter, Madison. She was turning 36, and even though things had been tense between us lately, I wanted to do something special. I drove to her house early that Saturday morning, used the spare key she'd given me months ago, and started setting up decorations before the guests arrived. Madison had been thriving at her new job at Pinnacle Financial. After years of dead-end positions, she finally landed a role at this prestigious investment firm 8 months ago. The money was better than anything she'd ever made. I was proud truly. My little girl was finally finding her success. But as I was about to learn, sometimes success comes with a price. I walked into her beautiful townhouse, the one she could suddenly afford. After getting this new job carrying bags of decorations, a homemade cake, and enough optimism to power a small city, the house was quiet, exactly what I expected at 9 in the morning. What I didn't expect was to hear voices coming from upstairs. Specifically, voices that did not belong to my daughter. Now, I'm not usually one to snoop. Well, not usually. But when you hear your daughter's boyfriend's voice, mixed with what unmistakably sounds like her best friend Veronica's laughter, coming from the master bathroom, maternal instincts kick in. Or maybe it was just plain old nosiness. Either way, I found myself climbing those stairs with the stealth of a woman who raised two teenagers and perfected the art of catching them red-handed. The bathroom door was slightly open, steam drifting into the hallway. And there they were. Jason Mitchell, the man I had actually grown to like, and Veronica Hayes, the woman who treated me like some inconvenient relic from Madison's past, enjoying what was clearly a very intimate bubble bath. Well, not exactly the surprise party I had planned. But as my grandmother used to say, when life hands you lemons, sometimes you've got to make strategic lemonade. That's when I realized just how perfectly positioned I was to serve up some ice-cold justice. Here's the funny thing about catching people in compromising positions for one split second. You're shocked, and then your brain immediately starts calculating revenge. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds, listening to Veronica giggle about how Madison works so much she'll never suspect anything before something inside me clicked into what I like to call strategic grandmother mode. Because here's the thing about being 62, you've seen enough nonsense to recognize it instantly. And you've lived long enough to know exactly how to handle it. Let me back up and tell you how we even ended up at this bathroom betrayal. Because the setup makes the payoff so much sweeter. Madison started at Pinnacle Financial 8 months ago, and almost immediately her whole life transformed. Higher salary, designer clothes, a new confidence that I absolutely loved seeing. She'd struggled for so long after her divorce 3 years ago, and watching her rebuild was beautiful. Then she started bringing new people around. First was Jason, tall, charming, thoughtful, genuinely seemed to care about her. I liked him, which honestly should have been my first red flag. In my experience, if something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But he remembered my birthday, helped fix Madison's car, treated her well. I actually thought maybe she'd finally found a good one. Then came Veronica. Veronica Hayes with her perfect blonde highlights and her condescending smile. From the moment Madison introduced us 3 months ago, I could smell the fake on her like cheap perfume. She talked to me like I was a confused elderly woman who couldn't possibly understand their sophisticated work dynamics. Oh, Elizabeth, she'd say in that syrupy sweet voice. Madison told me you're retired. That must be so peaceful for you. All that time to garden and watch your stories. As if I were some mindless woman glued to soap operas all day. I have a master's degree in education and spent 35 years shaping young minds. But sure, Veronica, reduce me to your stereotype of a useless old lady. The worst part? Madison defended her. Every time I tried to express concern about Veronica's obvious manipulation, Madison shut me down. Mom, please, Veronica's been amazing to me at work. She's helped me navigate the office politics, introduced me to the right people. I need her friendship right now. Need, such an interesting word choice. I'd met Veronica's husband, David, at Madison's work holiday party last month. Nice enough man. Successful attorney. Seemed genuinely devoted to his wife. He'd shown me pictures of their trip to Italy and talked about their plans to start a family. The poor man had no clue his wife was out here sampling the company buffet, so to speak. And Jason, sweet, attentive Jason, the man who brought Madison flowers and made her laugh. Apparently he was also making Veronica very happy in my daughter's bathtub. Standing outside that bathroom door, listening to them talk about how easy it was to deceive Madison, I realized this wasn't just simple adultery. It felt calculated, organized. That's when I noticed Jason's wallet on the hallway table, carelessly dropped beside what looked like financial documents with Madison's name on them. My strategic grandmother brain kicked into overdrive. These weren't just cheaters. They might be something much worse. Time to find out exactly what kind of game they were playing with my daughter's heart and her money. Do you want to know what 40 years of teaching teenagers taught me? How to move silently through a house when you're gathering evidence. Those financial documents on the hallway table were calling my name louder than a fire alarm. I tiptoed past the bathroom, where Jason and Veronica were still conducting their little secret business meeting, and picked up the papers. My reading glasses were downstairs in my purse, but I could still see enough to send my blood pressure skyrocketing. Madison's banking information, her investment account numbers, and a real estate listing for a house in the Bahamas with a price tag that would wipe out every penny she'd saved. Well, honey, things just got a whole lot more interesting. I quietly made my way back downstairs, my mind racing faster than my arthritic knees could manage. This wasn't just an affair. This was a full-scale financial seduction, and my intelligent, successful daughter was the target. The irony of it all? They were so confident in their scheme that they'd gotten sloppy enough to conduct their affair in Madison's own house while plotting to steal her money. The audacity was almost impressive. I positioned myself by the front window, where I had a clear view of the driveway, and pulled out my phone. First call, Madison, Mom. Is everything okay? You sound weird, sweetheart. I need you to come home right now. There's been a plumbing emergency. Water everywhere. You need to see this. A plumbing emergency? Mom, just call a plumber. I'm in the middle of Madison. I used my teacher voice, the one that allowed no argument. Come home, now, trust me on this, she sighed, but finally agreed to be there in 20 minutes. The second call was trickier. I scrolled until I found David Hayes' number, the one he'd given me at the holiday party when he offered to help with my estate planning. David, this is Elizabeth, Madison's mom. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm at Madison's house and Veronica left her purse here. It has her medication in it, and she was really worried about missing a dose when I spoke to her earlier. Complete fabrication, but delivered with the sincere, concerned tone perfected over decades of parent-teacher conferences. Oh, that's strange, he said. Veronica told me she was going shopping with her sister today, but yes, she does need her medication. I can swing by and pick it up. Perfect. Madison's address is 1247 Oak Street. I'll wait for you. 25 minutes. That's how long I had to watch Jason and Veronica's world crumble. I spent that time looking through the financial documents more carefully. Jason wasn't just Madison's boyfriend. He was apparently her unofficial financial advisor. The house in the Bahamas was listed under a company called Mitchell Holdings LLC. 3 guesses who owned that company. The investment documents showed Madison had recently moved significant sums into high-yield opportunities. Jason recommended opportunities that, based on the paperwork, looked designed to drain money from Madison's accounts rather than generate any return. My daughter, my brilliant, successful daughter, was being systematically robbed by people she trusted. People she'd invited into her home, her bed, her life. A car pulling into the driveway snapped me back to the present. Madison's Honda Civic, right on time. I walked calmly to the front door, stepped outside, and locked it behind me with my spare key. Mom, what are you doing outside? And why do you look like the cat who ate the canary? Oh, sweetheart, I said, settling into one of her porch chairs like I had all the time in the world. We're going to wait right here for David Hayes to arrive, and then we're all going inside together to solve this little mystery. Madison stared at me, confused. David Hayes? Veronica's husband? Mom, what is going on? Patience, darling. Good things come to those who wait. And justice. Well, justice is about to be served with a side of very hot water. Another car pulled into the driveway. David Hayes stepped out, looking concerned, clearly ready for what he thought was an emergency medication pickup for his beloved wife. Mr. Hayes, I called out cheerfully. Perfect timing. Madison, why don't you unlock the door and we can all go inside together? I think you're both going to find this very educational. The moment Madison unlocked the front door, the laughter and splashing from upstairs hit all of us like a brick wall. David's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to devastation in about 3 seconds. That's my wife, he whispered, and my boyfriend, Madison added. Her voice barely audible. And my daughter's trust fund being liquidated as we speak, I said, lifting the financial documents I'd found. Because here's what I figured out while sitting on that porch. This wasn't just about sex. This was about money, manipulation, and a con game sophisticated enough to fool a smart woman like Madison. David looked like he was going to be sick. Madison looked like she might commit murder, and me? Well, I was just getting warmed up now. Before we go upstairs and interrupt their little spa day, I said calmly, I think we should all understand exactly what we're dealing with. I spread the documents across Madison's kitchen table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Madison, honey, did you know you've transferred nearly $200, zero into investment accounts controlled by Mitchell Holdings LLC over the past 3 months? Her face went white. Jason said those were safe investments. High-yield bonds. He's been helping me plan for retirement. And David, I continued, did you know your wife has been helping Jason convince Madison to liquidate her savings for a real estate venture in the Bahamas? David picked up the property listing with shaking hands. Veronica told me she was working late most nights. Special projects with new clients. Oh, she's definitely been working on something special, I said. The laughter upstairs had stopped. Apparently, our voices had carried. Mrs. Walker? Jason called from upstairs, his voice suddenly uncertain. Is that you? I looked at Madison and David. What do you say we go upstairs and have a little family meeting? Madison was already moving, her shock replaced by a fury that reminded me of the tantrums she used to throw when someone took her toys. David followed behind her, looking like a man on his way to his own execution. I brought up the rear, carrying the documents and feeling more satisfied than I had in months. We found them in the bathroom, frantically trying to get dressed. Water everywhere. Towels clutched tight like they were shields against the judgment they both knew was coming. Well, Madison said, her mother's sarcasm clearly inherited. Don't mind us. Just coming up to check on the plumbing. Seems like there's been some overflow. Veronica spoke first. Madison, this isn't what it looks like. Oh, shut up, Veronica, I said pleasantly. We all have eyes. What this looks like is exactly what this is. The interesting question is how long you two have been planning to steal my daughter's money. Along with her trust, Jason wrapped a towel around himself, trying to salvage some dignity. Elizabeth, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, David said quietly, is how I married someone capable of this level of betrayal. Madison stared at Jason like she'd never seen him before. The investments, Jason, the retirement planning, the house in the Bahamas. Was any of it real? Madison, baby, I can explain, don't you baby me. Not while you're standing naked in my bathroom with my supposed best friend after convincing me to empty my savings. The silence that followed was perfect, the kind of silence that happens right before everything collapses for the people who deserve it. Veronica made one last attempt at manipulation. Madison, you don't understand the pressure we've been under at work. The company's restructuring. People are losing jobs. We were trying to protect you, help you secure your financial future by stealing from me, by creating opportunities I wouldn't have found on my own. I had to hand it to her. Even caught red-handed, Veronica was still trying to gaslight everyone. That's when I decided to drop the real bombshell. David, you might want to call your attorney because according to these documents, your wife has been using your joint accounts to fund this little venture too. The look on Veronica's face was priceless, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Oh, and Madison, you might want to check your computer later. I have a feeling our friends here have been accessing more than just your heart and your bathroom. Sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold, but other times it's best served immediately while everyone is still dripping wet and their lives are falling apart faster than cheap mascara in the rain. My computer. Madison's voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that precedes the destruction of kingdoms and the end of relationships. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of the documents. Honey, while Romeo and Juliet were playing house upstairs, I did a little investigating. These aren't just investment opportunities. They're systematic theft disguised as financial planning. Jason was frantically trying to put on his pants while clinging to whatever shred of dignity he had left. Madison, you have to understand we never meant for it to go this far. Oh, it went exactly as far as you meant it to. I cut in. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Both of you. Veronica finally found her voice. Elizabeth, you're making assumptions based on paperwork you don't understand, sweetheart. I may be 62, but I'm not stupid. I know a con when I see one, and I've seen enough of them to recognize the signs. David was staring at his wife like she was a stranger. Veronica, the joint account. The one you said was for the house renovations. How much is missing? Nothing's missing. David, it's invested. In a company owned by the man you're sleeping with in another woman's bathtub, I said. The fight went out of her completely for the first time since I'd met her. Veronica Hayes had nothing sarcastic or condescending left to say. Madison walked past all of us and headed straight to her home office. We followed behind her like some bizarre parade of betrayal and discovery. She turned on her computer and began checking her accounts. Oh my God, she whispered after a few minutes. Jason, the retirement account. The one you said was being rolled over into a higher yield option. It's empty, Madison, $47,000 gone. Transferred yesterday to Mitchell Holdings LLC. Jason looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. I can explain. The investment needed to be moved quickly. Market opportunity. I was going to tell you when? She snapped. Before or after you disappeared to the Bahamas with my money and my best friend. I walked over and pointed to a series of transfers she hadn't noticed yet. Honey, check these dates against your work schedule. Notice anything interesting? Madison's eyes widened as she scrolled. Every transfer happened on days when I was working late. Or when Veronica convinced me to stay overnight for those special projects. David repeated hollowly. She told me those were client emergencies. They were client emergencies, I said. Madison was the client and her trust was the emergency they needed to exploit. Veronica was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks like black tears of guilt. We never meant to hurt anyone. The company really is downsizing. We were both going to lose our jobs. We needed a way out, so you decided to steal your way out, Madison said. Using my money and my trust to fund your escape plan. Jason tried one last time to salvage the situation. Madison, we can fix this. The investments are real. We can get your money back. The only thing getting fixed, I said calmly, will be the criminal charges for fraud and theft. That's when David pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. David, wait. Veronica reached for him. Don't, he said sharply. Don't say another word to me, ever. As David dialed 911, I looked around the room at the wreckage these two had created. Madison's savings destroyed. David's marriage shattered. Trust broken in ways that could take years to rebuild. But as I watched my daughter's shock harden into determination, I realized something important. Madison was stronger than they ever gave her credit for. And she had something they never counted on. She had a mother who'd spent 40 years dealing with manipulative people. And who wasn't about to let anyone hurt her daughter. Detective Harrison. This is David Hayes. I need to report a financial crime in progress. Multiple victims, significant theft, and I believe we have all the evidence you'll need. As David gave the police Madison's address, I looked at Jason and Veronica one last time. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked them, assuming that an old woman like me wouldn't understand your sophisticated scheme. But here's something you apparently never learned. Never underestimate someone who's been around long enough to see every con game in the book. The sound of approaching sirens was the sweetest music I'd heard in years, but something told me this story was far from over because, as I was about to discover, the rabbit hole of their deception went much deeper than simple theft. Elizabeth's story. Chapters 6 to 10. The police showed up faster than I expected, which was perfect. Because Jason and Veronica were just beginning to realize their little fantasy was about to turn into a full-blown criminal case study. Detective Harrison, no nonsense, mid-40s. And clearly not in the mood for anyone's theatrics, took one look round and immediately split all of us up for questioning. But that's where being a retired teacher pays off. I know how to organize evidence, and honey, I had organized the hell out of their little scheme. Detective Harrison, I said, handing her the manila folder I'd put together while we waited. You'll want to look through these financial transfers, property listings, a timeline detailing exactly how my daughter's accounts were drained. She flipped through the pages, eyebrows traveling higher with every sheet. Ma'am, how did you obtain these documents? They were carelessly left on my daughter's hallway table, while the suspects were conducting business in her bathroom. Meanwhile, Madison was being questioned in the living room, David in the kitchen, Jason in the dining room, and Veronica on the front porch. Standard procedure, according to Detective Harrison. What wasn't standard was when my phone rang 20 minutes into the investigation. Unknown number. Elizabeth, this is Patricia Morgan from Pinnacle Financial. I'm head of internal security. I understand there's been an incident involving some of our employees. Now that was interesting. How on earth had Pinnacle learned about this so fast? Yes, there has been an incident, Ms. Morgan, I said, though I'm curious how you found out. We've been conducting our own internal investigation into irregularities in client accounts. Your daughter's name came up, along with several others. I think we need to talk. Several others. Oh, this was getting better by the minute. I'm at my daughter's house with the police right now. I told her. Perfect. I'm 5 minutes away with FBI agent Rodriguez. We've been tracking this for weeks, the FBI. I glanced out the window at Detective Harrison questioning Veronica on the porch. This wasn't just petty theft anymore when Patricia Morgan and Agent Rodriguez arrived. They brought a briefcase full of evidence that made my little folder look like a kindergarten art project. Mrs. Walker, Agent Rodriguez said, "You've stumbled into the middle of a major financial fraud investigation. Jason, Mitchell, and Veronica Hayes are part of a larger network targeting high net worth clients across 3 states. Patricia spread out photographs and financial records across Madison's kitchen table. Your daughter wasn't their first victim," she said, "or their last. We've identified at least 12 clients who were systematically robbed using the same romantic manipulation tactics." The scale of it was staggering. Jason wasn't just an opportunistic boyfriend, he was a professional con artist, targeting successful women through workplace connections. Veronica was his inside woman, picking potential victims and handing over their personal data. The house in the Bahamas, Agent Rodriguez added, was purchased with money stolen from earlier victims. "They've been running this scheme for 2 years. Madison joined us, pale but steady." "How many women fell for this?" 12 confirmed so far, Patricia said. "Total theft, about $1.8 million. I felt a mix of pride and fury. Pride because my daughter was still standing. Fury because these parasites had ruined so many lives. But here's what's interesting," Patricia said, looking directly at me. "You're the first family member to catch them in the act. Every other victim discovered the theft only after they disappeared. What made the difference?" Detective Harrison asked. I thought for a moment. I never trusted Veronica. Something about her attitude toward me felt calculated. And Jason seemed too perfect, too charming. In my experience, when someone tries that hard, they're hiding something. Agent Rodriguez nodded. Classic manipulation tactics. They study their targets, identify vulnerabilities, and exploit them. Veronica would have spent weeks learning Madison's insecurities. That's why she tried so hard to isolate her from you. Patricia opened a laptop and pulled up surveillance footage. We've been watching them for 6 weeks. This video shows Jason and Veronica meeting with their handler, the person running the entire operation, on screen. Jason and Veronica sat across from a well-dressed man in his 50s at a hotel restaurant. I couldn't see his face clearly, but something about the way he carried himself felt familiar. "Do you recognize him?" Rodriguez asked. I squinted. "Maybe. Something about the posture. But I can't place it." Madison leaned in, then gasped. "Oh my God, that's Richard Carlson, senior partner at Pinnacle Financial. My boss." The room went dead silent. "Your boss is their handler?" Detective Harrison asked. "It would make sense," Patricia said grimly. "Someone in senior management would have access to all client financial information. He could identify the best targets and provide the inside information needed to execute the cons." I sat back, letting the weight of that sink in. Madison wasn't just the victim of a romantic scam, she'd been targeted by an organized criminal enterprise led by her own employer. "How long has Richard been planning this?" Madison whispered. Agent Rodriguez closed the laptop. "Based on our investigation, at least 2 years. He's been systematically identifying female employees with significant assets and creating elaborate schemes to steal from them. And when they've been cleaned out?" I asked. "They disappear," Rodriguez said. "New identities, new cities, new victims. Until now, it's been the perfect crime." Detective Harrison looked around. "What changed? Why did you catch them this time?" I thought about it. Elizabeth, the teacher, the mother, the woman who'd spent 62 years learning how to read people. "Because," I said finally, "I'm old enough to have seen every con in the book and stubborn enough to trust my instincts, even when everyone tells me I'm wrong. But even my instincts hadn't prepared me for how deep this conspiracy went. You know what's worse than discovering your daughter's boyfriend and best friend are thieves? Realizing they're part of a criminal organization run by her boss. And worse than that, realizing you've met the mastermind before." I was staring at the surveillance footage when it hit me like a freight train full of memories. "I'd rather have forgotten." "Agent Rodriguez," I said, "can you replay the part where he turns toward the camera?" He did. And this time, I saw it clearly, the way he tilted his head when he laughed. The little gesture he made with his left hand. "I know him," I said quietly. "Richard Carlson." "I know him." Madison snapped her head toward me. "What do you mean you know him? From where?" "From your father's funeral, sweetheart. He was there." The room froze. "My father's funeral," Madison whispered. "But Dad died 3 years ago, long before I started working at Pinnacle." Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "Mrs. Walker, are you certain?" "Oh, I was certain. The kind of certain you get when someone appears at the worst moment of your life and offers help you never asked for." "He approached me after the service," I said. "Said he was sorry for our loss. that he'd heard wonderful things about Robert's work in the community. He gave me his card and said that if Madison ever needed career guidance, he'd be happy to help. Patricia was jotting notes furiously. Do you still have the card? It's probably in my purse somewhere. I remember thinking it was odd who offers career advice to a grieving widow at her husband's funeral. Madison sank into a chair. He's been planning this for 3 years. Since Dad's funeral, it would appear so, Rodriguez said grimly. He likely researched your family after your father's death, identified Madison as a potential target when she was vulnerable after the divorce, and then orchestrated her recruitment to Pinnacle. Detective Harrison reviewed her notes. So the job offer, the meeting, Jason befriending Veronica, none of it was coincidence. None of it, Patricia confirmed. This is a sophisticated long-term con. Madison was targeted from the very beginning. A chill ran through me. Agent Rodriguez. I asked softly. How many other women has he recruited this way, finding them at vulnerable moments and then destroying their lives? We're still investigating, he said. But based on what we know, Richard Carlson has been running this operation for at least 5 years. We estimate between 20 and 30 victims. 20 to 30 women. 20 to 30 families destroyed, all for what? Money that could never fill the empty space where a soul should be. Madison was crying now, not just for herself, but for all the other women who trusted the wrong people. How did I not see it? How was I so blind? Because you're a good person who assumes others are good too, I told her firmly. And because these people are professionals. They make their living exploiting that goodness. Agent Rodriguez's phone buzzed. He answered briefly, then hung up with a grim look. That was my partner. Richard Carlson just boarded a flight to Grand Cayman. We think he got word the operation was compromised. He's running? Madison asked. They always run when their schemes fall apart, Detective Harrison said. But don't worry, we have extradition treaties. Patricia was already typing. I'm freezing all accounts tied to Mitchell Holdings and Carlson's personal finances. Whatever we can recover will go back to the victims. What about Jason and Veronica? I asked. Agent Rodriguez finally smiled, the first time I'd seen him pleased all day. They're going to federal prison for a very long time. Conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft. We have enough charges to keep them busy until they're collecting Social Security. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet, Agent Rodriguez. I want to help catch Richard Carlson. Everyone in the room looked at me like I'd just announced I was joining the circus. Mrs. Walker, he said, I appreciate your willingness to assist, but this is an active federal investigation and I'm the one person in this room who's actually met him face to face, who's spoken with him, who might be able to help you understand how he operates. Madison grabbed my hand. Mom, absolutely not. This man is dangerous, sweetheart. I'm 62 years old. I've raised 2 children, taught high school for 40 years, and survived your father's death. I think I can handle one middle-aged criminal with delusions of grandeur. Agent Rodriguez was thinking it over. What exactly did you have in mind? He approached me once before when I was vulnerable. What if I gave him another opportunity, made myself look like an available target? Absolutely not, Detective Harrison said immediately. Civilians don't participate in active operations, but I wouldn't be participating as a civilian. I said with my sweetest smile. I'd be participating as bait. The silence that followed told me I had their attention. Think about it, I continued. He knows Madison's been compromised. He knows his operation is blown. But he might not know how much we've figured out about him personally. If he thinks there's still a chance to recover something from this disaster. Agent Rodriguez nodded slowly. If you contacted him, claimed you were trying to understand what happened to Madison's money, acted confused and vulnerable, he might see an opportunity to manipulate the mother of a victim. Clean up loose ends while making one final score. Patricia shook her head. It's too dangerous. This man has destroyed dozens of lives. Exactly, I said. Which is why he needs to be stopped. And I'm the only one here who can get close to him. But deep down, I knew the real reason. Richard Carlson made a fatal mistake when he targeted my family. He underestimated what a mother will do for her child. 3 days later, I was sitting in my living room, wearing a wire that cost more than my car and feeling like the most dangerous 62-year-old woman in America. Agent Rodriguez had finally agreed to let me contact Richard Carlson, but only under strict supervision and with enough backup to invade a small country. The plan was simple. I'd call Richard, pretend to be a confused older woman trying to understand what happened to Madison's money, and hopefully lure him into meeting with me. If he took the bait, he was ours. Remember, Agent Rodriguez said through my earpiece. Act confused but not suspicious. You're a grieving mother who doesn't understand financial crimes. You just want answers. Patricia Morgan was monitoring everything from event outside. along with Detective Harrison and what felt like half the FBI's white-collar crime division. Madison was tucked safely away in a hotel under police protection, probably watching this circus through surveillance feeds. I dialed Richard's number with steadier hands than I expected. Richard Carlson speaking. Mr. Carlson, this is Elizabeth Walker, Madison's mother. I hope you remember me from my husband's funeral. A pause, then that same smooth, practiced voice from 3 years ago, of course. Mrs. Walker, I was so sorry to hear about the difficulties Madison has been experiencing. Difficulties like systematic theft disguised as an unfortunate misunderstanding. That's actually why I'm calling, I said, letting my voice quaver just enough. I'm so confused about everything that's happened. The police were asking about investments and accounts I've never heard of. I was hoping you might be able to help me understand. I'd be happy to help in any way I can. Mrs. Walker, this must be very overwhelming for you. It is. Madison tries to explain things to me. But you know how young people are with technology and finances. I just can't keep up. Perfect, Rodriguez whispered in my ear. Keep playing the confused grandmother angle, perhaps, Richard said smoothly. We could meet for coffee. I could review the situation with you and explain things in simpler terms. Hook, line, sinker, though. Would you? That would be so kind. I'm just at a loss about what to do, of course. How about tomorrow afternoon? There's a lovely cafe called Sterling on 5th Street. Very quiet. Perfect for a private conversation. That sounded wonderful. 2 o'clock is perfect. Mrs. Walker, I want you to know that despite everything that's happened, I still consider Madison family. Pinnacle Financial takes care of its own. After I hung up, Agent Rodriguez's team spent the next hour walking me through exactly how they plan to turn Sterling's Cafe into the most surveilled coffee shop in criminal history. But I had my own plans for Mr. Richard Carlson the next afternoon. I showed up at Sterling's 15 minutes early, dressed in my best concerned grandmother outfit and carrying enough hidden recording equipment to start my own television station. The cafe had already been quietly cleared of regular customers and refilled with undercover agents, pretending to sip lattes. Richard arrived exactly on time, every inch the polished businessman in his expensive suit and practiced smile. Mrs. Walker, he said warmly, taking both of my hands in his. Thank you for reaching out. I can't imagine how difficult this must be. We ordered coffee decaf for me, regular for the man whose entire world was about to collapse, and settled into a corner booth, perfectly positioned for surveillance. Now then, Richard said, pulling out a tablet and several official-looking documents. Let me explain what appears to have happened with Madison's accounts for the next 20 minutes. He spun an elaborate tale about employee misconduct, rogue investment schemes, and a string of unfortunate misunderstandings. Jason and Veronica became rogue criminals acting without authorization. Madison was painted as an innocent victim that the company was valiantly trying to protect. It was a masterful performance. If I didn't already know the truth, I might have believed every word. So you see, he concluded, while the situation is tragic, it's important to understand that Pinnacle Financial had no knowledge of these unauthorized activities. I see, I said slowly. So Jason and Veronica acted completely on their own? Absolutely. Pinnacle Financial has the highest ethical standards. We would never condone such behavior. That was my cue, Mr. Carlson. I need to ask you something, and please forgive me if this seems presumptuous, of course. Mrs. Walker, please. Ask me anything. I looked at him with my best confused grandmother expression. At my husband's funeral, when you gave me your card and mentioned you might be able to help Madison's career, did you already know about her financial situation then? His practiced smile flickered just a hair, but enough for me to see the calculating mind behind it. I'm sorry, Mrs. Walker, I'm not sure I understand the question. Well, I said gently. Madison had substantial savings even 3 years ago, and you seem to know quite a bit about our family circumstances. I wondered if maybe you'd already identified her as someone who might benefit from your investment services. The silence lasted a beat too long. Mrs. Walker, he finally said, I think perhaps you're reading more into a simple gesture of condolence than was intended. But I could see it in his eyes now, the realization that I wasn't the confused old woman he thought I was, and that this meeting was not going his way. You know what's interesting about being my age, Mr. Carlson? I said, dropping the shaky grandmother voice entirely. You develop a sixth sense for when someone's lying to you. His face went completely still. And Mr. Carlson, I added, you've been lying to me since the moment you sat down. That was when Agent Rodriguez and his team moved in. The look on Richard Carlson's face when he realized he'd been outsmarted by a confused grandmother was worth every terrifying moment of the past week. As federal agents surrounded the table, the mask of professional concern finally fell away. Mrs. Walker, he hissed through clenched teeth. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but oh, I know exactly what game I'm playing. I said pleasantly. It's called Catch the Criminal Who Destroyed My Daughter's Life. And congratulations, Mr. Carlson, you just lost. Agent Rodriguez was already reading him his rights while other agents confiscated his tablet and documents. All around us, the cafe customers revealed themselves as law enforcement. Richard Carlson's carefully constructed world collapsed in real time, and the best part? We weren't done, Mr. Carlson, Rodriguez said after finishing the Miranda warning. We have a few more things to show you. They led us into a back room where Patricia Morgan had set up a presentation that would have made my old teaching colleagues proud. Charts, timelines, financial records, surveillance photos, every surface was covered. This is what we call evidence, Patricia said, her tone crisp with satisfaction. 2 years of investigation into your operation. Every victim, every transaction, every crime you've committed, the sheer scope of it was staggering. Richard had targeted women across 3 states, using a network of accomplices like Jason and Veronica to systematically drain them of their life savings. The total theft exceeded $4 million, but here's my personal favorite, Agent Rodriguez said, pulling up surveillance footage on a laptop. Video of you meeting with Jason and Veronica 2 days ago at the Grand Cayman Airport. Richard's face went pale. That's impossible. You never what? Rodriguez cut in. Never tried to flee the country when you realized your operation was compromised? Never attempted to access offshore accounts filled with stolen money? The footage clearly showed Richard at the airport, luggage in hand, looking like a man desperate to disappear forever. We've been tracking your movements since Mrs. Walker first contacted us, Patricia added. Every phone call, every financial transaction, every frantic attempt to save yourself. I watched Richard absorb the reality of it all. There was no escape route left. No clever story that could get him out of this. No innocent explanation to cling to. You want to know what your real mistake was? I asked quietly. He looked at me with a blend of fury and resignation. You assumed that because I'm old, I must be helpless. Because I'm a woman, I must be easy to manipulate. Because I'm a mother, I must be too emotional to think clearly. Agent Rodriguez was smiling now, enjoying the moment. But here's what you didn't count on, I continued. I've spent 40 years dealing with teenagers who thought they were smarter than me. I've raised 2 children through every crisis imaginable. I survived my husband's death and rebuilt my life from scratch. Richard stared at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. So when some middle-aged con artist thinks he can target my family, when some pathetic excuse for a human being decides to destroy my daughter's life for money, I leaned forward across the table. That man is about to learn what happens when he underestimates the wrong mother. Agent Rodriguez placed a hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Walker, I think Mr. Carlson understands the situation now. They led Richard away in handcuffs. But I still had one last message for him, Mr. Carlson. I called after him. He turned just enough to hear me. When you're sitting in your federal prison cell for the next 20 years, I want you to remember something every single day. You're going to wake up knowing you were outsmarted by a 62-year-old retired teacher. I smiled sweetly. And Mr. Carlson, justice isn't just served cold. Sometimes it's served by someone old enough to know exactly how to make it hurt. After he disappeared down the hallway, Agent Rodriguez turned to me with genuine admiration. Mrs. Walker, in 30 years of law enforcement, I've never seen anything quite like what you just did. What did I do? I asked, honestly confused. You took down a criminal enterprise that operated successfully for 5 years. You recovered millions for dozens of victims. And you probably saved countless other women from being targeted. I thought of Madison Safe now, finally starting to rebuild her life. I thought of all the other women Richard had stolen from. I thought of justice finally catching up to him. Agent Rodriguez, I said softly, I just did what any mother would do. I protected my family, but even as I said it, I knew there was still one more thing I had to do to close the chapter completely. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom and watched Richard Carlson receive 25 years in prison. Jason got 15. Veronica received 12. The judge made it clear their crimes had destroyed families and violated the most basic principles of human trust. Madison sat beside me, stronger and more confident than I'd seen her in years. Most of the money had been recovered and returned to the victims. More importantly, she had survived something that would have broken a weaker person. But the best moment came after the sentencing. When we stepped out of the courthouse, Mom, Madison said, pausing on the steps, I need to ask you something. What's that, sweetheart? Did you really not suspect anything until you caught them that morning? Or did you know something was wrong before then? I smiled. Remembering all those tiny red flags that had added up over time, Veronique's condescending attitude, Jason's to perfect charm, the subtle way Madison's personality had shifted over the months. Honey, I've been suspicious of Veronica since the day I met her. Something about her just felt wrong. And Jason? Well, any man who tries that hard to impress me is usually hiding something. Madison laughed, her first real, carefree laugh in months. But you never said anything, she said. I tried to. Remember, you told me to mind my own business. That I was being an overprotective mother. Madison winced. I did say that, didn't I? Multiple times, I said. Along with accusing me of being jealous of your new friends and unable to accept that you were successful. Madison winced at the memory. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I took her arm as we walked toward the car. Sweetheart, you don't need to apologize. You were being manipulated by professionals. The important thing is that you're stronger now, smarter now, and you'll never let anyone take advantage of you again. How can you be so sure? Because you're my daughter. And if there's one thing I've learned in 62 years, it's that we Walker women are a lot tougher than we look. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Walker, I have some news I thought you'd want to hear. Good news, I hope. The best. Richard Carlson's case has been featured in FBI training materials as an example of how citizen cooperation can break major criminal operations. Your actions are being used to teach other agents how to work with civilian witnesses. I had to laugh. Agent Rodriguez, are you telling me I'm now part of FBI curriculum? Unofficially, yes. There's even talk of inviting you to speak at the academy about recognizing and responding to financial fraud targeting families. Well, I always did enjoy teaching, I said, smiling. But the real victory came 2 months later when Madison called me with unexpected news. Mom, I got a new job. Wonderful. Where the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Apparently, my experience as a victim, combined with my finance background, makes me an ideal candidate to help other people targeted by similar schemes. I felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly knocked me over. My daughter had turned her trauma into purpose, her victimization into a way to help others. Madison, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I want you to know something. What you did for me, the way you fought for me, even when I didn't appreciate it, showed me what real strength looks like. I want to be that person for other people. After I hung up, I sat in my garden with a cup of coffee and thought about how the whole nightmare had ended. Richard Carlson would spend the rest of his productive years in federal prison. Jason and Veronica were facing similar fates. The stolen money had been returned. Madison was not only recovered but thriving in work that gave her life meaning. And me? Well, I'd discovered something about myself at 62 years old. I'd learned that being underestimated by the wrong people can be the most powerful weapon you'll ever have. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Mom, my first case starts Monday. A financial fraud ring targeting elderly women in retirement communities. Any advice? I typed back, trust your instincts, protect the vulnerable. And remember that the bad guys always underestimate the good guys. I added with a smile, oh. And sweetheart, make sure they know this particular good guy has a mother who taught her how to fight. 6 months later, Madison's team had dismantled the retirement community fraud ring and arrested 12 people. The local newspaper ran a feature story about the mother-daughter duo, who had become an unofficial force for justice in financial crimes. They called us the Walker women and described us as proof that experience, determination, and family loyalty remain the most powerful tools in the fight against white-collar crime. I kept a copy of that article on my refrigerator next to Madison's FBI Academy graduation photo. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just seeing the bad guys get what they deserve. Sometimes the best revenge is turning your pain into purpose and your experience into a way to protect others. And sometimes the best revenge is simply proving that a 62-year-old mother will always be more dangerous than any criminal who thinks age equals weakness. Richard Carlson learned that lesson the hard way. But then again, some people only learn when the lesson costs them everything. And in my book, that's exactly the price they deserve to pay. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.